Good morning to everyone. I extend a warm welcome to all of you for the second session on Parinati 2020, the first of its kind virtual bridge course organized by Mangalore University in association with Trisha Group of Institutions. Just to give a quick recap of what happened in the last couple of days, Parinati saw its wonderful launch on the day one, where the Honorable Vice Chancellors of Mangalore University and Amity University from Uttar Pradesh gave a great start to the event by highlighting the need for such programs and highlighting the need for such programs in creating opportunities or exposure for the students beyond the four walls of the classroom. And yesterday, which happened to be the Independence Day, we saw a great lecture from Colonel Praveen Botankatte, who was a retired Indian Army veteran, who spoke about the career opportunities, and the life experiences in Indian Army. That was something really a goosebump moment for all of us to listen to him. And today we have a very unique topic, which is, and we have named it very rightly, we have named it very aptly as the lesser known facts of the Indian ports, the road towards glory. Port management is something probably is one of the crux of the commerce, and unfortunately, it is not a part of many of our curriculum and syllabuses of commerce and economics related subjects as well. And that's a matter of concern. And if you've been looking into the Prime Minister address in the recent past, maybe on the Atmanirbhar Bharat, which was talking about, and the very recent speak yesterday in the Independence Day, he was completely stressing upon the need for improvising or modernizing logistics and the supply chain industry. That's really, really need of the hour. And there's so many projects coming up from the government of Karnataka, the government of India. But then the concern for the academicians like us that the developments, the basic operations, the modalities is not well connected with the students. And that's the one reason today why we are organizing this particular topic. And I couldn't remember anyone better than Mr. Anil Enduri, happens to be my good friend and also my role model for kind of leadership skill that he has depicted is something incredible. Anil Enduri was, the superintendent of police and went on to become an IG, the inspector general from state of Kerala. Then post-retirement, he took up a very challenging, very new job for him to head the Krishnapatnam port, which was otherwise was not known to many during that point of time. But then I was closely associated with him and his organization. I could see the transformation that took place in just under a decade, and today Krishnapatnam port is doing just amazing, becoming like a benchmarking for the rest of the ports. So that's the achievement. I also recollect one very important thing. I think 2016 or 17, my team from Manipal and my team from Krishnapatnam port conducted one of the finest international conference on logistics and supply chain, where we also had received an appreciation letter from Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi, because at the global level, at the national level, people have understood the importance of this. And that's why we have called Anil Enduri, and just one single call, he accepted it, because I know when it comes to student interaction, he's always a big yes to us, right? And we're really honored and privileged on behalf of the Trisha Group of Institution and Mangalore University. I extend a very warm welcome to Anil Enduri. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation, sir. It's indeed a great privilege to see you after a long time. The agenda
Thank you,
for
Guru.
today, he will speak on the overview about the logistics and supply chain and the basic operations of the port management in India. And then on, we will take up the questions from the students and the questions that is from the host and the other faculties. So without taking much time, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, let me introduce Anil Enduri. Over to you, sir.
To see you and nice to hear you. And it's a pleasure always interacting with you and talking to your students. And at the outset, let me wish everybody a happy Independence Day. Independence Day is always a very important moment for all of us as Indians. And then also, I wish everybody a safe COVID journey, I would call it. We should all come out of this journey strong, healthily, happily, without getting into troubles. And then we have to take care of ourselves and of our loved ones. So coming to the topic, it's an important topic indeed, as you mentioned. Indian ports have some highs and lows in their journey, but a long way to go. Indian port sector is an important sector, but not given due importance during the past 60, 70 or 80 years. It was seen as another entity rather than an important entity, because for any nation to survive and progress, ports play a very important role. India being a peninsular country with 7,500 kilometers of coastline, starting all the way from Gujarat in the west to Kolkata or West Bengal in the east, India should have played a big role in the maritime space of the world. India could have gained a lot. If you look at the world also in the global this thing, you have Western Hemisphere and the Eastern Hemisphere, and all the vessels, ships traveling from east to west or west to east have to cross India under the Indian subcontinent in the Indian Ocean. So we had a lot of advantages. We had a lot of chances to capitalize on our location, our strength of getting connected with the Eastern countries and the Western countries alike. But somehow ports have not been our mainstay. Maybe when we got independence, we were looking more on self-sufficiency rather than export dependency. Countries like Singapore have focused a lot on how to improve their exports, how to uh, strengthen their economy by virtue of their focus, strategies, and the locations. India, I'm sure, didn't do enough in the port sector. Even today, India can only boast of 12 major ports under the Major Ports Act. And then, of course, another 200 to 250 for number's sake, minor ports, of which only hardly 30, 40 are doing well. We need to focus a lot on improving our ports, ports modernization, ports performance, ports efficiency, and also should look at how we can modernize and improve the efficiencies of the port, thereby becoming a connect between the Western nations and the Eastern nations. Today, we boast of very good ports like Mundra, a private sector port on the west coast, Krishnapatnam, a private sector port on the east coast, and some of the government of India ports also doing well, like JNPT on the west coast, and let's say Paradeep in the east coast. But other ports also have to do a lot. Especially when we developed ports, actually the three old ports were Mumbai, Kolkata, and Chennai were developed by the Britishers for their own interests. They laid railway lines connecting the hinterland, especially the factories and the mines, to the nearest ports of Mumbai, Chennai, and Kolkata, just to export the country and take our natural resources to their country, or to export their products to India. Today, we have to focus and we have to see how our country is going to play a major role in international maritime trade, especially after the WTO. China has gained a lot. India has a lot of scope to gain. We need to strengthen our manufacturing base. We need to strengthen our product export or import categories and see how we can become an important part of the world global trade. So if you look at the trade composition of India, it's hardly 2% of the world trade. But if you look at our population, it's more than 1/6. So China has a lot. China has gained a lot, but India hasn't done much. And we need to see why our ports are not doing well, our country is not doing well. If you look at, again, in detail, though we have 12 major ports and some minor ports, we see ports themselves as a solution to the problem. No, ports is only one part of the problem. Along with the port development, making the ports efficient, but we need to also have hinterland developed where we have industrial zones created, industrial base to be strengthened, products to be manufactured and then exported. And similarly, we being an agriculture country, we should look at not just exporting our agriculture products, how we can export value-added agriculture products, thereby country's economy gets strengthened. For example, a case in point, now today, one state which is doing very well in the port sector or in the export-import sector is Gujarat. Historically, Gujarat and Maharashtra have a greater edge being on the western side and being trade mostly happening between India and Western countries like you have Middle East or you have Europe. But that was capitalized and two states have gained a lot because of that. That is Maharashtra and Gujarat. A lot of ports are doing very, very well in these two states. Unfortunately, Karnataka and Kerala, though on the west coast, couldn't gain much on this front. Same is the case with East Coast. Traditionally, all the export base started happening or industrialization started happening around Kolkata, being the Kolkata port there for almost 200 years plus, and then Chennai. But we have a huge East Coast also where now states like Andhra Pradesh are focusing a lot, and now Andhra has become almost second or third in terms of port capacities and port performances. So there's a lot of scope for the states which are lagging, which I would call laggards in the port sector, Karnataka and Kerala on the west coast and Andhra Pradesh and Orissa on the east coast. Though these two states are doing well relatively, but there's a lot more to do.
especially when at a time when India is looking at Look East policy and Act East policy. There are two policies with which Government of India is actively trying to engage with the Eastern partners, starting from Bangladesh, Myanmar, then all the ASEAN countries, then Far East countries, China, Australia, Japan. So we need to develop ports and we need to understand what cargoes we can export to those countries, what products we can export to those countries, what products and cargoes we can import from those countries, thereby strengthen our economy. Same is the case with, every state should have its own policy, how to use this space and then strengthen. If you look at the country's economy, even a country like India, more than 60% of the economy happens on the coast. The rest of India creates less than 40%. So this can be added further or extended further. Today, countries are talking about blue economy. If you look at the globe, less than 30% is only land mass. Remaining 70% plus is the waters. Economy, it's called blue economy. How do you capitalize on India's strength of having 7,500 kilometers of coastline with almost like 200 kilometers of EEZ, where this maritime wealth can be harnessed, and then that could be used for strengthening or growing our country. So in this space of blue economy also, these 9 coastal states have to focus and should draw plans for the next 10 to 20 years. How do they capitalize on the blue economy? Like each of the states, Gujarat should think of where they are and how to move forward, how to develop their port and other supply chain infrastructure, thereby capitalize on the longest coastline they have in the country. Similarly, Maharashtra should have its own plans. Same is the case with Karnataka. Karnataka should plan what are its competitive advantages, what are its strengths, what type of infrastructure and strategies they should develop to harness the blue economy on their coast. Same is the case with Kerala. And Andhra Pradesh is also now focusing a lot on how to harness its strength. Andhra has second largest coastline after Gujarat. So they are talking about developing 3 more ports and 8 fishing harbors so that they can harness on the blue economy. It requires a lot of focus. It requires resources, financial resources to be brought into. Then it requires a lot of strategies, then proper infrastructure, which is state of the art, not just state of the art at this point of time, but it should be like futuristic, like in future, what type of vessels are going to come, what types of trade is going to happen, what types of infrastructure is required, what type of technologies are to be pressed into, so that the blue economy should become the mainstay of all these coastal states. In Andhra, for example, I'll take one example. People normally think seafood exports are happening in a big way from Kerala because MPEDA, Marine Product Export Development Agencies in Kerala. Kerala does well on that front. Then Karnataka does well. But Andhra is doing extremely well. Today, if India is exporting 40,000 crores worth of seafood, Andhra alone is exporting 30,000 plus. It's good for Andhra, but it's not good for other 8 coastal states. Why not they also look at developing this sector and capture the world market? Because we have already one example, one live successful example in Andhra Pradesh. If Andhra can do 30,000, if all the 9 states can do it, could be 270,000 crores or even 3 lakh crores. We have coastal land, we have people who are hardworking. What we need to have is focus, strategy, and resources to support them initially so that we can develop the seafood industry. Same is the case with ship making industry or ship breaking industries. Same is the case with supply chain industries. How do we capitalize on our strengths? Today we have a fantastic golden quadrilateral roads. We are talking about dedicated freight corridors. We are talking about warehousing policies. Government should understand, gone are the days where each of the sector of logistics work in an isolated silo manner. For example, if you talk about supply chain and logistics, it's not one entity. It's about ships, it's about ports, it's about railways, it's about airways, it's about roadways, it's about coastal shipping, it's about inland shipping, it's about warehousing, it's about trucking, it's about parking, it's about retailing. So we need to understand each of these subsectors requirements, be it the infrastructure requirements or policy support or knowledge or skilling or land requirements, and see how all these subsectors of the supply chain are integrated so that we create a system where an efficient, highly cost-effective, efficient in operations, redundancies are not allowed, and such systems have to be created. Thereby, we capitalize on our innate strengths and make India a supply chain powerhouse. When I talk about supply chain powerhouse, Singapore is today, how much it's manufacturing, what is its land area, what is its population, but it's a supply chain powerhouse. All the cargoes of the world go to Singapore and go out. They are just doing transshipment. Today, they are handling 50 million containers. They hardly take less than a million for their country or even less than that. But India is such a big country with 7,500 kilometers of coastline, 1.3 billion population. We are handling around 10 to 12 million TEUs. That's not very good on our part. We should. China has something like 550 million TEUs ports. We are not doing anything. We are not doing anything. Singapore, such a wonderful country, a miracle country. They just survive on supply chain efficiencies. They just survive on port dynamics, port logistics, port strategies. Singapore started their port. They got independence in 1965. We got independence in 1947. Singapore started a port after 1965. They used to model their port on Chennai port thing. Today, where is Singapore? Where is Chennai port? Chennai port handles less than 2 million containers and Singapore handles 40, 50 million containers. Even our small little neighbor, Sri Lanka, now they're handling 6, 7, 8 million containers. What are we doing? Why are we not focusing? Is it something very difficult? No, we are not focusing. We are not having that integrated thinking where all parts of supply chain should interact and talk to each other. Multimodal cargo movement should happen. Ease of doing business should be improved. Technology should be pressed in. Or cost of supply chain should be brought down. Today, a percentage of cost of supply chain in our GDP is, 13 to 14%. That's shameful. Yeah, developed countries are less than 5-6%. We can reduce this. How do we reduce this? Our truck's average flying time or distance per hour is 27 kilometers. World average is 55 kilometers per hour. That means we have to understand if our cargo moves by truck at 27 kilometers per hour average for the nation, you have to employ, let's say 40 tons means 2 trucks. That means our supply chain cost has doubled. So unless we improve on all these indices, be it the truck movement, be it the warehousing operations, or be it the warehousing costing or efficiencies, be it the port costing or efficiencies, be it the port handling speeds and efficiencies, or the equipments what we are using, how to phase out the old equipments, how to bring the new equipments, we just cannot compete in the world because our cost of our product, even if you make most wonderful product in India, if your cost of logistics or transportation is high, you are not going to compete in the world market. Thereby, your manufacturers are put to serious disadvantages. So we need to reduce our costs and improve our efficiencies in the entire supply chain link. If you see, there are vessels which are 20,000 tons carrying capacity, and there are vessels which carry 2 lakh tons. If you try to bring coal in 20,000 or 30,000 or 40,000 tonner vessel, you are bringing everything, but at the same time, the cost is huge. Today, you have worldwide vessels bringing 2 lakh tons of coal in one vessel. If you bring 10 vessels of 20 or 25,000 versus one vessel of 2 lakh, you are saving $10 to $12 per ton. That's a huge saving for the importer. That's a huge saving for the manufacturer. Your end power cost will come down. Your transporter's cost will come down. Your supply chain cost will come down. Your GDP will increase by 2 to 3% if you just improve your supply chain. So now you can understand how important the ports for our country, how important the port infrastructure, its efficiency, its systems, our governance systems, everything has to be modified in accordance with our one task of improving our supply chain efficiencies, improving our port efficiencies. So India is talking about building new ports. India is talking about bringing new equipments to improve ports efficiency. India is talking about integrating the supply chain. Thankfully, Government of India is also understanding, some of the state governments, if not all, are understanding the importance of ports, supply chain, and the blue economy. Government of India today has started a separate department called Logistics Department. So they want to bring the policies and then integrate all these factors, all these silos which are working into one single entity, thereby your cargo moves freely. Today, if you want to, let's say, take one truck or one container from Karnataka to Krishnapatnam and to, let's say, to USA, you have to talk to or engage a truck in Karnataka. Karnataka has to follow Karnataka rules and regulations, then the cargo will remain the same. When it enters Andhra, it has to follow Andhra regulations. Then when it enters the port, it talks about port regulations. When it goes onto the ship, another form of regulation. So there are too many things happening for that little cargo which moves from one end to the other end. So if we can integrate all the processes and systems, make it seamless, easy thing, cost will come down, efficiencies will go. People talk about supply chain management. Chain means links. There are many links is called chain. But when you talk about chain, then you have to understand your supply chain strength is its weakest link. If one weak link is there and that link is broken, your cargo is stuck. So I talk about not supply chain management. Supply chain should become a supply queue where cargo moves seamlessly, documentation happens easily, and cargo movement, documentation, and all other decision making should happen properly on proper document setup in the IT space. Thereby, we make it a supply tube management where cargo flows seamlessly. For this, we may have to bring in artificial intelligence. We may have to bring in blockchain technologies. We have to improve all our technologies which are used on the instruments which are kept in the port. For example, IoT solutions have to be developed. So we have to take the advantage of IoT, artificial intelligence, blockchain, so that our documentation process, our decision-making process, our financing process also happens seamlessly whilst the cargo is moving, either by road or by train or by truck, or it is kept in the warehouse or it is on the ship. So I think I spoke a lot. If you want me to talk about something else, it will be easy for me to speak.
Definitely. We will take some questions because we already have some questions. And I'm very happy to hear the being a Sunday morning and students are really eager to. So yes, very happy to know that the Sunday morning, there are a lot of students who are a part of these sessions and they're flooding here with a lot of questions. Can I take it up one by one with your permission, Anil sir?
Yes, please.
So yes, the happy thing is, being a Sunday morning, I have a lot of students who are viewing this and a good amount of questions has flown up. Before that, a very interesting question for the viewers here, and one of my faculty has also asked it. Been in police service for a very long time, and suddenly into the area which you are absolutely unaware. That's not a great thing. But the great thing was the transformation of that particular sector, which is totally unaware to you in a short span of time. How did this happen, sir? From a policeman to a port specialist?
Understand, nobody starts at 100. Everybody starts at 0. It's only when you are starting. So before a policeman, I was also a college student. I was also a kid and joined college. And then from college, I joined police. And from police, I came to the port. So when you get into a particular job, if you start focusing on that, there's nothing which is new. It's only when do we start and when do we start learning and doing. So when I started as a port CEO, yes, like any other learner, I was also learning, but I made a little more effort. And then I started I believe in hands-on management. So I started working in the port along with my teams and learned. So I was learning everything and I learned. It's not something great. I'm still learning.
Real source of inspiration, and you are the right example of that the code, nothing is impossible. From all my viewers here who I didn't mention at the beginning, that Anil sir has also been handpicked by the government of Andhra Pradesh and have posted him in the advisory board for improvising the ports across the state. And also, he's into a lot of academic activities as well. He's also, the reason behind starting Krishnapatnam Academy, which also runs courses on maritime. And in a couple of months, he'll be a PhD holder also. And I can call him Dr. Anil already because he's just a Vivavosi, I think, he's spending from his time. But great. So, in your entire address, you are talking about we have not done enough, we have not done enough. There are a lot more to do and a lot more to go. In 2020, sir, with so much of technological advancement, and decades back when countries like Singapore, UAE, and a small country like Sri Lanka were able to do, what stopped us, sir? I mean, do you think that our priorities were not right? Do you think that this was one sector which was not given highest priority and kind of a neglected sector?
would say you are partly true and partly not true. For example, if I take the telecom example, before the mobile industry came, all other countries were doing pretty well with the landline telephones. Almost like every house was having a landline telephone. India could not provide landline telephone. Even in the year 2000, I still remember there used to be a lot of limitations and quotas for providing a landline connection to a particular house in India. So thanks to the technology revolution, thanks to mobile phone revolution, India jumped, leapfrogged into mobile. And then today, India is a leader in mobile technology revolution. And everybody in India has mobile phone, not one, but even two or more. So sometimes being a laggard also helps. That helped India in mobile industry. Same is the case when Sri Lanka and Singapore came, they leapfrogged and then they understood the importance of ports, and then they integrated the entire logistics industry and then planned nicely, used their strategic locational advantage and built the ports and then developed cargo. They handle most of the cargo that doesn't belong to that country. They are doing transshipment. That means third country's cargo goes into this country and goes out. While going in and going out, they make money. So whereas India had a long maritime history, we had history which is thousands of years, and then we have planned ports which are not futuristic. We had planned systems which are not futuristic. As a result, we are stuck with our old legacies, with our old baggages. So trying to break all those shackles, integrate all the constituents of supply chain is a big task, because if you take Indian Railways is a huge thing, world's largest railway system. So to break their old systems and connect them to other forms of logistics, it's not easy. Similarly, Indian road sector is huge compared to many countries. Same is the case with India's agriculture, India's industry. So we have disintegrated or not very well integrated in the system. It's not disintegration, but not integrated. As a result, all our supply chain constituents work as silos. So now to bring all of them together and then devise systems, make them talk to each other and work in a seamless manner, it's quite a challenge. It's a big country. It takes time. But yes, as you said, we need to focus a lot on how we are going to build our maritime strength in the next 20, 30 years. How should our ports function? How should our fishing harbors function? How should our roads help for the supply chain to move? How should our railways help for the supply chain to move? And how you can reduce your supply chain cost should be focused. Like for example, today, your railway line is a busy railway line between Kolkata and Chennai. When a passenger train is going, all the cargo trains are kept aside. Cargo train from Vizag to Vijayawada may take 24 to 48 hours, whereas a passenger train takes 8 hours, because the line is completely busy carrying passengers. Then once the cargo is set aside, cargo cost of transportation of cargo is increasing. So you are not focusing on your cargo movement, be it on the road or be it on the rail or be it on the air or be it on the ship or be it handling in the port or warehouses. Unless you focus, your cost is increasing. Your end customer is paying much more. For example, I was working with some people in Myanmar. Most of the Myanmar pulses are imported into India. Pulses are grown there by Myanmar citizens, but if you go really deep into that, they are all Biharis migrated to Myanmar before 1935. When Myanmar became an independent country. But the farmer doesn't get enough rate for his produce. So because of supply chain inefficiencies, because of other constraints, these pulses, they are traded in Singapore, moved to Singapore, from there sometimes to Colombo, then comes to Chennai, then comes to the consumer. As a result, we pay 200 rupees per kilo, whereas the farmer there may not get more than 30 or 40 rupees per kilo. So it is all supply chain redundancies or inefficiencies or profiteering. So unless we understand and connect the producer and consumer, remove the supply chain redundancies, inefficiencies, profiteering, the consumer suffers, the producer suffers, somebody in the chain makes money, but it is not efficient. I understand everybody should make money, but it should not be in an inefficient way or profiteering way. There has to be some rationale and logic or equity in that profiteering also. So I'm talking about one particular commodity coming from one country to another. So like that, if you take every commodity, every product, supply chain inefficiencies and redundancies are causing problems. Thanks to Amazon, thanks to Flipkart and such intermediaries which are coming, which are using technologies well and efficiently, costs are falling. We need to they are integrating the supply chain. We need to integrate the supply chain and reduce the costs. So we need to focus a lot on ports and supply chain systems for our country, and each state should have its own strategies.
And you also highlighted about the complex process. You gave a very small example if a particular cargo has to be transferred from, let us say, Karnataka to Andhra Pradesh. And you said about so many complex process. And are we still working on it to simplify that so that, there is a seamless, I don't know, if it is within the country, if that is a complex process, how is the process when the two countries are interacting, sir? Could you also throw some light on the documentation, the complex process involved in an international trade, sir?
See, it's too complex because one is cargo movement happens in multimodal. That requires many times loading, unloading, warehousing. Sometimes this is redundant and it increases the cost. Every time it changes its way of transportation or way of storing, again, it requires a lot of documentation. At every stage, there is taxation. You'll be surprised sometimes, even our own GST, on some part, you have some form of GST 18%. When it comes to the ship, another GST is there. Though the cargo remains the same, since the mode of transportation changes or warehousing changes, the entire GST structure will change. Documentation is getting complex. So today, Honorable Prime Minister is talking about, we are one nation, one mobile connection, one nation, one bank account, one nation, one ration card account, one nation, one health card, one cargo identity card or a system has to come. Documentation should not be too many things. For example, if you are booking your cargo in a truck, you have different documentation. If you book it in RTC, it will be different. If you book in a train, then railway documentation is different, payments are different, taxation is different, and then input credit, which comes in the way. So sometimes this input credit is direct, or sometimes it is in the reverse charge mechanism. All create problem. When cargo is moving from place A to B, when ownership is transferred from, like, you buy, I sell, I buy, somebody sells. So you need to have simple documentation system, taxation system, wherein the cargo moves freely. Documentation happens nicely. Intermediaries interact on the web and then in the cyberspace and sort out their sale or documentation issues and then money transfer issues in a seamless way. Unless we understand these intricacies and put a system in place, it is today very, very complex. Sometimes the documentation is more complex than physical movement of the cargo.
Sir, I got a very interesting question from one of the students here. Like you said, the process that you're explaining, I'm very sure we are already working on it. And I'm very also sure that it's going to take a lot of time to get all these things in a track and, finally have a state where India now has one of the best logistics and supply chain industry. The question is, by the time the smaller ports like Sri Lanka and other people who have already improved, is there a possibility, like, whatever the transport is coming from the West, we may lose because of a strong logistic and supply chain industry from Sri Lanka, and the other countries may prefer to go to Sri Lanka instead of coming to Bombay or some part of Andhra. Is it possible that we may lose out on competition, sir, because of the time lag?
We are losing, we have lost, we are losing, and we'll continue to lose unless we focus. See, now Government of India is talking about building another port in Andaman and Nicobar Islands, which will be a transshipment port, which will be competing with let's say Singapore, Malaysia, and Sri Lanka. And the Government of India is also talking about a couple of transshipment ports on the west coast also, especially Adani's Vedinium port and Cochin port. And Krishnapatnam is also focusing on transshipment. It's not about creating infrastructure. It's not about giving our intention to the world. We have to understand exactly who are the players in this maritime space. What does transshipment means? Do India requires so many transshipment hubs or one or two main ports and remaining being hub ports? How do we attract the liners to call our country? What are their problems? If we understand, discuss, and support them, it's not difficult to beat the countries like Singapore or Colombo. It all starts with intention and understand the concerns of the players in this space and solve the problems. If we do not have a holistic approach, we may build nice, good infrastructure, but we may not be far from our dreams of creating transshipment hubs in India.
There's one question on the government's intervention to improvise on the projects, the new projects which is coming up. One thing is on Sagarmala. Could you please tell us what is this Sagarmala project all about, sir?
Yeah, Government of India, since 2014, they wanted to improve the efficiency of the ports. They understood the importance of port-led development and started this ambitious project called Sagarmala. Basically, there are 5 important goals. First goal is how many times we realize that ports are efficient, but port evacuation systems are not efficient. That means a ship brings 2 lakh tons of cargo to a particular port and the cargo is in the port. But it may take sometimes 2 months or more than 2 months to evacuate that cargo. Nobody will bring coal to keep the coal in the port. He brings the coal to take it to a power plant or a cement plant or a steel plant and burn it so that he produces his product and then make money or give the service. But unfortunately, the cargo gets stuck in the port for months. So in order to improve the efficiency of evacuation, first goal of Sagarmala is to improve the road and rail connectivity to the existing ports or provide the road and rail connectivity to the new ports. Second target was how to improve the efficiency of port operations, how to bring state-of-the-art latest technology into the port operations, thereby improve port efficiencies, port discharge, etc. That is the second target. Third target is how do you improve skilling and how do you improve the people who are depending on the coast, especially the fishermen community. So like that, they have had 5 ambitious programs to improve the ports and port infrastructure and port connectivity. So Government of India is continuously working on that and we could see fruits in some areas and maybe we need to do more on that front.
We all know that how you transform the Krishnapatnam port in a very small span of, let's say, under a decade. What is that you feel which Krishnapatnam port has achieved, which is very, very different from the rest of the port in our country?
Yeah, there are quite a number of things, but I mentioned a few of the things. Yeah, first thing is Krishnapatnam port. If you look at 2008, if you had gone there or 9, there was nothing except open coastline, like all other 7,500 kilometers of coastline.
True.
And the construction started in 2007. In a span of 18 months, breakwaters are completed and 2 berths were completed. From then on, the journey has started. You have to compare with another thing, not to denigrate such great ports, but unless you compare, you will not understand. For example, I always compare Krishnapatnam port with Chennai port. Chennai port was conceived, designed, and built during the British time, and maybe its age could be more than 150 to 100 years. Today, Chennai port is handling around 52 million tons of cargo, with so much of industrial base around its around the Chennai port. Krishnapatnam port started in 2008. In a span of 10 years, Krishnapatnam port reached 54 million tons and it became bigger port than Chennai in terms of cargo handling. In terms of size, Krishnapatnam can grow even 5 times more than Chennai. So it also became the fastest growing port on the East Coast, second biggest private port in India, 6th biggest port in India. And in terms of efficiency, it is at par with the best port in India, Mundra, or in the world also. So it created a lot of benchmarks. It is in Limca Book of Records twice. It created a lot of benchmarks in terms of port operations, efficiency, growth. But more than all these things, we have demystified ports. Ports means it's a mystery for everybody. We don't know what happens inside the port. Everybody would love to know about the ports. Everybody would like to see the ports. Everybody would like to know what is happening in the ports. But somehow ports are always away from the mainstream. But they are actually wonderful economic engines of the country. So people need to know more about ports. So we demystified the port sector. We started inviting people and intelligentsia and academicians, students to come and visit the port and understand why ports are important for the country, why supply chain management is important for the country, how we can improve our efficiencies, how we can expose our inefficiencies and work on them. So we have demystified the port sector. Then second is, ports were always like the bosses because they were all run by government. So we became the servant of the customers. That means whoever has cargo, the port chairman, port CEOs, port MDs, each of us, we used to go to the customers and talk to them and understand their requirements and build infrastructure which is customer driven so that their cargo specific requirements are fulfilled. And then customer has been brought truly to the center of port operations. Many times we used to sit before an infrastructure is planned, design the infrastructure based on the specific requirements of a particular customer and created infrastructure, thereby brought in efficiencies, thereby brought in a lot of savings to the customer. And it was like literally a customer-driven product. So those are the big changes we have brought. We have a dedicated customer service department. We had which was continuously interacting with the customers. And similarly, we also worked a lot on skilling. So port sector requires different skilling in different areas. So we started a lot of skilling activities in collaboration with your own university, in collaboration with National Skill Development Corporation, state corporations, so that the youth who are ready for jobs are trained and made ready for the jobs which are available. And we have created employment for more than 10,000 people in the port.
Yes. I think fantastic, sir. This was the right point that I wanted to ask, and you hit it very at the right time. As you rightly said, the logistics or any port is like a front runner for the Indian economy. And I don't say it's silent, it's people, talk less about it. And that was one of the apt reason why we had this topic today and we had this conversation today. Sir, is that one of the reasons you also felt there is also a need of huge need for, upskilling and all that? Is that one of the reasons why you also ventured into academics, so that at the same time, all the academic related skills can be upgraded and can be brought up to the notice of the students? And this is definitely a visionary step. Port and alongside the academics can do wonders. What do you say?
Absolutely correct. These things, actually, port is not a standalone industry. If you talk about cement industry, it is a standalone industry. If you talk about power plant, it's a standalone industry. If you talk about any industry, it's a standalone industry. But if you talk about port, it's an ecosystem. Port is an ecosystem where on the sea side, there are particular operations. On the land side, there are different operations. There are trucking activities. There are warehousing activities. There are value addition activities in the warehouse. There are activities which connect with the industry. Maybe sometimes cement plants start working inside the port. Steel plants start working inside the port. Power plants start working just outside the port. So we are an ecosystem. And then a city comes around it. An industrial city comes around it. People start living. If you look at any big city in the world, which is very old, they are all port-based cities. You talk about Hong Kong, you talk about Singapore, even old cities like Baghdad, Basra, New York. First a port comes, then industries come around the port, then a city comes around it, and it becomes a megapolis or a metropolis. Even Kolkata, Chennai, and Bombay has the same example. So we need to understand port not as an independent industry, but as a port ecosystem. Plan it in such a way, in a futuristic way. We are doing a mistake when we plan too many ports with little or limited infrastructure. We should plan for limited infrastructure for the current day needs, but we should have a master plan which fits the bill for the next 100, 200 years, because ports live for hundreds of years. They don't live for 5 years, 10 years like other industries, and then when the cycles change, they go away. No, port will remain. Ports infrastructure may change, ports cargo may change, but ports will remain for 1,000 years. So we need to plan our ports in such a big way so that a port, along with that, an industrial city around it, along with that, livable spaces, working spaces, an ecosystem is created, a supply chain space is created. So we should plan an integrated port city whenever we plan, so that we get the benefits of all. If you look at Shanghai, you just go back 25 years, there was nothing. In 25 years, they have built a huge world-class, now 3 crores or 4 crores population live there. Huge Shanghai city, industrial city, Shanghai living city, and Shanghai port. All came together. Then what happens? Supply chain efficiencies are automatically brought in. The people will commute less, the cargo will move less, they go into the ship and go to the world. Whereas here we put industry in Bangalore, port is in some place, and then a railway line is at some other place. So from the industry, it is trucked to the railway line. From the railway line, it goes to the port. From the port, it goes out. So this kind of too many independent entities will cause problem for the supply chain. Let Bangalore be Bangalore. Let a new city be planned around a new port which is coming up on the west coast in Karnataka. Or let a new city come up around Krishnapatnam. We need to plan. We need to create another Chennai around Krishnapatnam. Like that, we need to create an integrated port ecosystem in the city where industrial city is there, logistics entities are there, education institutions are there, be it the skilling or knowledge, so that the students are also made future ready. They capitalize on the opportunities that are coming up. Some may join the port, some may join the ship, some may join the industry which is coming near the port, some may learn new skills so that new jobs they are eligible for. So that is why in the port ecosystem, skilling and knowledge-based entities also have a huge role. Mangalore University should focus a lot on maritime courses and maritime skilling initiatives, and then supply chain initiatives, so that as Mangalore port grows and as Mangalore also becomes a huge industrial city and a supply chain powerhouse, the universities, colleges, and skilling entities also should gear up for that. If you are trying to create other skills rather than these skills, somebody else from Odisha or Andhra has to go to Mangalore to do the jobs which are available for the boys and girls in Mangalore or around Mangalore. So all these things should go hand in hand.
I think, see, rightly said, sir, for Mangalore University and nearby colleges, it will not be a big task because of very few kilometers away, we have New Mangalore Port Trust, which is also doing, wonderful. And day by day, year on year, I could see a lot of transformation happening in the New Mangalore Port Trust. But, sir, the concern for academicians like us, even you for that matter, like, of late, we have realized that the importance of integrating these subjects in the syllabus of the universities. And very recently, few of the universities across India have started talking about logistics and supply chain. It's very, very good to know about it. But the ones you mentioned, sir, be it US or be it European countries or be it Singapore or be it China or be it Sri Lanka, do they have this integrated in their, the academic qualification, something which is pertaining to the logistics and supply chain, sir?
Absolutely. These days, even most of the best universities are also talking about MBA in supply chain and logistics. For example, my daughter got her admission only on supply chain and logistics in Cornell University. So, yeah, similarly, Port of Rotterdam organizes a lot of courses which are world-class in port management, port economics, etc. So Mangalore University and institutions like you should also think, because it's not just, academic institutions start teaching something. The universities also, the ports also have to play a huge role in opening up their ports so that they have hands-on experience. They have internship programs. So we need to open that so that the students get better idea. And once they have experience, they are ready for the world. They can work in any port in the world. And who can beat Indian student in that matter if they are given proper academic as well as practical inputs?
True, true.
So
I always believe, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I always believe this is one area where it should have less of a classroom teaching and more of the hands-on experience. So you did the right thing, started, Krishnapatnam Academy. I think this is, I think port should run an institutes rather than or collaborate with any universities so that hands-on learning is given more and less of a classroom teaching. You agree with this, sir?
Absolutely correct. Maybe like for example, Mangalore Port can talk to Mangalore University and both of them can talk to Rotterdam Port, and then, have exchange programs, have syllabus compared, understand the specific needs of particular supply chain entities in India and organize programs, organize internships. Thereby our guys are ready. There's no point in having, regular MA, BA, BSc, MBA programs. I don't disrespect them, but these programs also should be there so that they are ready.
Anil sir, I was talking about the education aspects. Port starting its own, educational institute so that there is exposure and opportunities beyond the four walls of the classroom. You were highlighting about that.
Port, Krishnapatnam Port has started its own small academic institute called CAPS, Krishnapatnam Academy of Professional Studies, mainly focusing on port and port subjects and port management and port operations and a lot of other skilling and operational activities. So the idea was to take freshers from colleges and then train them and then make them ready for handling port jobs. Port jobs are quite complex sometimes and they require a lot of precision and a lot of focus on what they're doing. So port is a wide range of subjects. It has a wide range of subjects. It could be maritime courses like shipping or ship engineering, or it could be pure CHA courses, then freight forwarding, then port equipment handling, like that. There are so many things, even marketing. So we started courses specifically to make the kids, the students ready for handling important jobs. And we could create a large knowledge base, not only for our port, for many other ports. So our boys are there almost in all the ports in the country.
Great.
But I came to know first about you through this such initiative.
Yes.
Manipal University, and I could meet you, and then we could have exchange programs also.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the moral responsibility of institution like you and institution like any education institutes to join hands with the corporate and come out something, very unique to the students. And in the end of the day, it's a win-win situation for everyone. And that's what the matter for the country as well. And that's where I think even Prime Minister Modi highlighted that such initiatives are really very important to connect with corporates and academics so that this particular industry can be taken ahead. So there's a lot of questions from my BCom students who said that, is there, what is the current situation of job opportunities in logistics and supply chain? Can we even now focus our career towards, the logistics and supply chain industry? What is your say on this? Since the most of my students are...
Indian government is planning of national maritime policy for 2030. For the next 10 years, what type of infrastructure should be created? What type of port should be constructed? Each of the states are also coming out with their own policies. And then logistics department, Government of India, Ministry of Commerce is also talking about bringing the national logistics policy. And also certain states like Andhra is talking about logistics universities. So the idea is to train the boys and girls ready for port jobs and logistics and supply chain jobs. And the best part of the story is once you are working in some port, you are open for the world, because a lot of our pilots, they go to various countries and work there. A lot of our port experts are working in Singapore, in Hong Kong, everywhere. So you are available and you are sought after by almost all ports in the world. It depends on what type of skills you are acquiring, because if you talk about port and supply chain, it's a huge subject. So in which area you are trying to specialize, and then how you are going to become an expert in that area. And once you become an expert, because this is one sector where theory doesn't work. Theory only works up to a limited extent. You need to have hands-on practical experience. That is very important. So if you have a couple of years experience in a particular port or on a ship or on a supply chain entity, then you are ready and you are eligible for fantastic job opportunities and fantastic careers. And many
so
of
to create that,
entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. To create that initial interest, I think we should also start taking students to the industrial tour kind of a thing. They can visit the nearest port. But I would suggest they must visit the Krishnapatnam port for the kind of transformation that is, or a benchmark that is created in the whole nation. Do you appreciate that, sir?
Absolutely correct. In fact, I would recollect one of my good friends' comment when Port Trust chairman in India are generally IAS officers appointed who are otherwise not port experts. Once they are appointed as chairmen at a sufficiently senior level, they are sent to Rotterdam or Antwerp to study and learn about the ports and come back and manage their respective ports in a better manner. So we need to create such excellent institutions of academics as well as ports inside India, so that we need not go elsewhere. They can go to the nearest ports and learn those good practices and implement. In fact, when we developed the port at Krishnapatnam, I was not looking at good practices in port sector alone. I was looking at good practices in banks, in academic institutions, in government, in other industries, and then I was replicating such good practices into the ports. For example, when Government of India started ease of doing business practices, we started how do we do EODB, ease of doing business, in the ports, and we created a small department and started working on the complex processes we were following in the port, and then studied the redundancies or whether it is required or not, and how to modify it, how to make it simple so that the customer has that ease to work with our port. So we need to continuously learn and improve. So similarly, the students should visit all these ports and learn and improve. So the experts also should keep meeting and then keep learning from the good practices that are happening in the ports worldwide and in India.
As you rightly said, research plays a very, very important role. I think probably the reason of success behind Krishnapatnam port is definitely goes to the kind of amount of research that you people have done initially, and that's why today you can see the transformed Krishnapatnam port. Have you been across to any of the best ports, sir, and what it actually gave you like a wow factor in any of the ports that you visited? Could you recollect any memories of that?
See, as far as I'm concerned, I really admire and like both Singapore as well as Shanghai ports.
Okay.
Because they are Asian examples. People talk about half a dozen ports in the world. When you talk the best ports in the world, they talk about Rotterdam, Antwerp. Then they talk about Korea's port. Korea's port, I've been to that place. Then Shanghai and Singapore. So I admire Asian examples: the Korean port, the Shanghai port, and the Singapore port. Everywhere it is simple, meticulous planning and developing a an ecosystem. Here we develop port, we don't develop road. We develop road, we don't develop railway line. We develop these three, we don't develop industries. We work in parts, in bits and pieces. Ports should not be planned in bits and pieces. Ports should be created as an ecosystem. As I said, there should be a port which is futuristic, which should fulfill our needs for the next 100, 200 years. The breakwater should be designed according to that. The channel depth and length should be planned properly. The berthing systems and equipment should be planned accordingly. The warehousing systems and the backup yard space, storage spaces should be planned accordingly. The road connectivity, see, we lay a 2-lane road, but suddenly the port makes it busy, and then we start acquiring for the 4-lane, 6-lane. So you make a 2-lane, but your road corridor should be planned for 8-lane or 12-lane. Today itself, because now it will be cheap. After some time, the land cost will go up. Similarly, railway line, we lay 1 line and stop, but suddenly that becomes a bottleneck. We need to plan for 2-3 railway lines so that, futuristic, it's futuristic. So like that, we need to plan the infrastructure for the next 100 years. Then we should also plan for the industrial cities which are likely to come up around the ports, their requirements, their land requirements, their power requirements, their water requirements, and the city that is likely to grow around that particular port. Where do they live? What type of conflicts will come between the industry and the populace? How do we resolve the conflicts? How do we bring colleges and universities there so that, the students and the kids get the benefit out of that? So we need to have a proper holistic plan in the ports and around the ports and develop it. Maybe we can't spend all the money now, but we should have everything ready so that we plan and bring them according to the requirement.
So what stops us from forward thinking or forward planning? As rightly said, sir, I think probably we know that there's a vision for developing ports, and we are still operating in many states, 2-lane or 4-lane. If you look at UAE or if you look at Singapore, what I was being told is Singapore, for that matter, anything that they do, they plan for next 25 years and next 30 years. What stops us from doing that, sir?
See, you have to go back to pre-Golden Quadrilateral days. I still remember it was like having a 2-lane highway was a dream for many of us. So when Honorable the then Prime Minister Vajpayee ji has announced a Golden Quadrilateral of 4-lane road connecting the 4 cities, Delhi, Kolkata, Mumbai, and then in the south up to Chennai.
Correct.
Many people laughed at it as usual. We are all too smart. So we said India is a poor country. We cannot raise so much of resources. We don't need, because we are still not able to feed our poor. All kinds of very prudent, logical excuses were thrown. But the then PM, he found a way. He started a vehicle called National Highway Authorities of India, then put diesel cess, and then pumped in the money. Today, you can't even imagine India without this Golden Quadrilateral road. So, but that itself was a huge task then. It's difficult to now complain that we should have planned for 8-lane, 16-lane then. But don't you think for a country of our size, we need a 16-lane Golden Quadrilateral?
Absolutely.
We need to have every single district connected with a 4-lane highway. Every village should be connected with a 2-lane highway. Why are our agricultural producers getting rotten in the villages? Because sometimes the supply chain cost of a truckload of tomato may be more than the truckload of tomato product cost.
It is.
The reason being our supply chain cost becomes so much, the product has no value. Many times supply chain cost is 2-3x than the product cost. When you transport coal cost maybe 3,000 rupees per ton, but its transportation could be 10,000 rupees. So that's how our supply chain is making many of our agriculture produce or industrial produce valueless. Just take the example of crude oil. Crude oil used to be at some stage $100 also.
Absolutely.
Because of COVID, now when it became zero, actually it became minus, because storage cost of crude oil in the ships or in the tanks was like reverse costing. The crude oil producer had to pay for storage and he was getting zero value. That was minus. So we need to understand the value of storage, supply chain, and its value as well as its cost, and then plan in such a way that that doesn't make the product or the agriculture or industrial produce in less value. So we need to plan properly. We need to have that integrated thinking.
Long way to go. Long way to go. Sir, I also understand. I'm speaking to a policeman. When I speak to a policeman, we should value the time. I'm very sorry it's extended 10 minutes late, but I just have two questions to you, sir, with your permission.
Sure.
Yes. So one, you have been recently handpicked by the government of Andhra Pradesh on an advisory board to assist them in transforming the port sector. And I call it right man in the right job. So with that, sir, what is your vision that you will have towards the Andhra government, sir?
See, that still is in the processing stage. Once I'm appointed, once I talk to the government and understand their vision, then I'll comment. There's nothing, as of now, I could speak on that.
Okay, okay. All right, sir. And the last one, which is one of the questions raised by my student here. It is said that, when we talk about all this trade and logistics, there's a lot of amount of smuggling which also happens over here. So there's one question related to that. How is that, the government and any other agencies can stop this illegal activity, which is actually spoiling the industry?
So there are two types of smuggling if you talk about. One is international or between the countries. Suppose, let's say, there's a huge tax advantage on a particular product between country A to country B. Then instead of paying tax, people try to bring through wrong channels. That is called smuggling, traditional smuggling. But then these days, there is something called interstate smuggling within India. Suppose there is a liquor taxation which is high in a particular state and it's low in a particular state. It starts moving. So you need to understand sometimes this taxation policies, not so appropriate taxation policies lead to this. Without justifying the act, I would say we need to see how our taxation policy is aiding this particular nefarious activity. We need to understand and modify that. That's the first stage. Second stage is where and how it is coming, and then how do you bring in technology to control it. Absolutely. Now, see, if you completely block it, trade will be stopped. You need to understand where smuggling is hurting us and where trade is important for us, bring in technology. For example, in Krishnapatnam, in the container space, we have understood that physically opening every container and inspecting by customs agency is impossible. For that reason, you cannot delay the entire movement. You cannot stop the cargo movement. So best way is how to bring in the latest technology. So Krishnapatnam port, immediately, it was the first in the country. We have bought and installed X-ray scanning machines. While the container is moving on a truck, it is scanned, inspected, and released. Like what happens in an airport, every bag is scanned. Whatever is chosen by the customs department based on their software and planning, we do that X-ray scanning and send it. So we have to bring in the latest technology. We have to, and there's another policy called birth to death monitoring of cargo movement by the customs. That means, let us say you're importing a car from Germany to India. So from there to here, through technology, you can monitor its entire movement till it goes to the final consumer here or the customer here. So we can do that through technology, through latest IoT solutions, through blockchain, through AI and computer vision based technologies, so that you can reduce that. You cannot stop trade. What you can stop is erratic or wrong policies. If they are there, they need to be modified, bring in technology, and then identify the wrongdoers. Out of 100 exporter or importer or transporter, not 100 are wrong. I'm sure less than 10% or less than 5% would be the wrongdoers. So make life difficult for them. At the same time, make life easy for the honest businessman.
Now I understand how policeman is able to transform the Krishnapatnam port.
Thank you, thank you. That's what we're trying to do in Krishnapatnam. Make it very customer friendly, at the same time make the life difficult for the wrongdoer.
Absolutely. Sir, on your concluding remarks, sir, where would you like to see the Indian ports in the next 10 years?
First, we should stop talking about ports as a single entity. We should talk about port and supply chain system of India.
Absolutely.
Port and supply chain system of India is one thing. Port, shipping, everything should be seen as a supply chain industry. And we should first declare supply chain and logistics as an industry. Today, it's a commercial activity. It is an industry. So we should declare it as an industry. Every state government should come out with a logistics policy. Government of India's logistics policy also need to be read by each one of us, and we should think how that can be made better. And then every government should create logistics departments. Today, what happens? Agri-logistics means agriculture department will talk about it. but the trucking industry is in motor vehicles department, but the train is in railway department. So like that, it's totally fragmented. So let's talk about logistics as one single entity, one single industry with one single policy, one single academic and skilling entity, and then documentation, then banking. Logistics should be given a lot of support by the financial and banking institutions also. We should see logistics as a core activity. Today, thankfully, the COVID has brought the essence and the core value of supply chain to the center stage. You can stop anything, you can lock down, but your food has to move, your medicine has to move, your hospitals have to run. Everywhere, supply chain is the integral part. And without supply chain, we wouldn't have had food. And after 4 or 5 months of lockdown, we are still eating and we are still talking. Why is that happening? Because every single industry has supply chain in it. So we have to understand the importance of, even if a country goes to war, country's war capacity is decided by its supply chain strength also.
Absolutely.
Because if we don't put our fuel or supplies properly delivered, they can't fight on the borders. So supply chain,
logistics, right?
Absolutely, supply chain is the core activity around which other activities have to be planned. So if we understand the importance of that, then the story is over and we'll do much better than what we are doing now.
Wow. In short, you are looking into something like one nation, one industry of logistics.
Logistics and one integrated policy wherein all these redundancies or all these complications are removed.
Absolutely. So all my viewers here, we have come to an end of this most awaited discussion on the ports. As I said, it was the lesser known facts for many of us because of various reasons. Maybe academics also not integrating those subjects into your syllabus. So there are various reasons behind it. And I'm very happy that I was able to, execute this program with the support from Anil sir. And as I said, when I talk about logistics and supply chain, I can't remember anyone else than him. I've seen him transforming the biggest institutions like this. So I'm so happy, sir, that you have accepted my invitation at a very short time. And you delivered as always, sir. It was great listening to you. One of the finest presentations I've ever seen. So thank you so much, sir. On behalf of Trisha Group of Institutions, my chairman, CA Gopal Krishna Bhatt, my students and my faculty, I extend a big thank you to you. Thank you so much, sir. And I also, next time when you are here to meet Udupi Krishna, I also invite you to my campus where we can have an interaction, a small interaction with my students as well.
Sure, thank you. It will be a pleasure.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Myself, Guru Prasad Rao, the host and the principal from Trisha Group of Institution, signing off.
Thank you.